Hey everyone, Rho here. Today we're talking Guilliman's plans across the Great Rift, as we ask just what could the Lord Regent have in mind. General spoiler warning to begin, as the events we are discussing today are from across the Warhammer 40k universe, so you have been warned. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. Okay. Now, with Ultramar once more safe from the advances of Mortarion and his Death Guard, and the southern half of the Imperium about as stable as it can be, for the moment at least, the Primarch Roboute Guilliman has announced his intention to once more cross the Great Rift. And although we know he is going, we don't yet truly know why. And it does open some good avenues of possibilities. So why is Guilliman once more crossing the rift? And just what could it all lead to? Now, before we really get in, yes, the most simple explanation is really just to reinforce the area. With the southern half of the Imperium as stable as it can be, it really makes the most common sense for Guilliman to use his forces where they are most needed, to make the most of this opportunity and give Dante the help while he can. And not only that, communication across the Great Rift is notoriously difficult. The reports that Guilliman is most likely receiving are most probably few and far between. In order to get a true understanding of the state of the Imperium Nihilus, there's really no better option for Guilliman than to go and see for himself. With that out the way, let's discuss a few more interesting possibilities. Firstly, launching the next stage of the Indomitus Crusade. Now, I guess this is the most logical assumption, but it's not without its difficulties. We know Dante has been left with the major responsibility of holding together this embattled realm. And for his part, he is assembling his own fleet within the Blood Angels' home system. This will be his own battle fleet for the Imperium Nihilus. However, this task for Dante is much harder, and is mostly made up of any vessels he can save or that arrive to the Blood Angels system from other war-torn systems. And as of yet, it hasn't struck out on any major assaults. For Guilliman, it's much more just a political decision, with the big timeline shift backwards. Rather than being at the end of the Indomitus Crusade era, we are merely now at the end of the first stage, and Guilliman has had to disband the Unnumbered Sons due to the sheer political pressure. And let's just think about that for a minute. In an Imperium in turmoil and on the verge of disaster, Guilliman has had to disband the fleets taking the fight back to the enemy the second any stability is in sight, due to nothing but the sheer amount of political fear and pressure. So although this being the end of only stage 1 means obviously future stages to come, I'm not sure Guilliman could assemble an Indomitus fleet-sized force of his successors without major shockwaves ensuing. It all feels a bit too soon, at least from the opposition point of view. So although Guilliman will absolutely go at the head of an impressive fleet, I mean he is the Lord Regent after all, I don't see it being that announced stage 2 just yet. However, it does remain a clear possibility. Next we have establishing a real crossing across the Cicatrix Maledictum. The biggest problem undoubtedly blighting not only the Imperium, but the galaxy as a whole, is the Great Rift. Even the power of the Emperor's Astronomicon cannot cross this warp scar. There remains precious few safe passages across, the main one perhaps being steel, the Nachmund Gauntlet, home to the infamous war zone of Vigilus, possibly the most vital war zone within the Imperium still at this moment. Guilliman, however, is no fool, and he would know having so much strategic value tied up into one system is nothing short of foolish. So establishing a new foothold across the rift just makes too much sense. Somewhere that could be developed into an established bastion of defense for the Imperium. Vigilus was never planned to be this gauntlet of safe passage. That's really just how it's worked out. The truth is, Guilliman may secretly know Vigilus can't hold forever anyway. That Calgar's last victory was a mere desperate reprieve at best. And the time to act is now. This would also be an interesting wrinkle in the Calgar-Guilliman relationship. I've spoken before on this topic, with Calgar already feeling the Primarch is particularly critical of him. He undoubtedly could see this as a lack of faith from Guilliman's perspective. That Guilliman never had faith in his ultimate victory. Whether right or wrong, that would be a nice little development in this underlying storyline. Next we have confronting the amassing threat amid the Somnium stars. As we know from the ongoing Dark Angels narrative, Luther, the arch-traitor himself, has escaped, and he is rumoured to be within the warp rift known as the Somnium Stars, believed to be at the head of a force of fallen, strong enough to rival the Legion of old. Now, while I'm not saying Guilliman would know of Luther and the Fallen, although he could do, I'm sure he would have to be aware of reports of an enemy force amassing in this scale. I mean, there's no way the Primarch himself wouldn't have been informed about a force of Chaos Space Marines, or traitor legionaries if you will, in legion size. There's no way an enemy force of that size would not reach the ears of Guilliman. This is a threat of unprecedented scale. I mean, this is a threat to rival Mortarion and his Death Guard in Ultramar. And just what a fascinating way of advancing the Lion Return narrative this could be. Guilliman stumbling upon the Fallen and Luther in one fell swoop. You could even have Azrael and the Unforgiven arriving to boot. Admittedly, probably not going to happen just yet. But man, what a scenario that would be. I would love to see Guilliman's reaction to learning his brother's fate upon his return to Caliban. Imagine his reaction to engaging traitor Marines, only for reports to come in that they're all Dark Angels. And really, you would have thought it has to happen at some point before we get the return of the Lion himself. You would expect to see more steps along this narrative storyline before the eventual return. And well, Guilliman crossing the rift could be just that. And well, from one unlikely scenario to another, but one I think that could be an intriguing possibility, and given the current Emperor's Godhood storyline, is a confrontation with Lorgar. We've had minor teases of a golden figure at the head of a Wordbearer's crusade, which can only be the Horizon himself. And as much as Guilliman has been focused on Ultramar, it's worth keeping in mind he is still the Lord Regent. He is still the head of the entire Imperium, and as such, being Guilliman, he still marshals most of the Imperium's defense, so that means he sees all of the reports that are out there. Can we really say that this wouldn't have crossed Guilliman's path? A crusade of traitor legionaries, led by a mysterious golden figure. I for one believe Guilliman must have seen that, and it's also a given in that situation that Guilliman knows it's his brother. For all his faith in Dante, surely he wouldn't leave it to him to face down one of his traitor brothers, demon elevated to boot. I mean, Guilliman has undoubted faith in Dante, as I'm pretty sure do all of us. But can we really see Dante facing down a traitor Primarch, at the head of his own legion at that? I just can't see it happening. So in Guilliman's effort to cross the Great Rift to shore up its defences, perhaps Guilliman could reveal that the true purpose of crossing the Great Rift was to stop another of his brothers, and thus not only renewing the rivalry with Lorgar, but giving us one of the most fascinating conversations in the lore we will ever see. Guilliman and Lorgar talking of the Emperor's divinity. Now, with the World Eaters being rumoured next year, you'd assume we won't be getting Lorgar anytime soon, which admittedly does throw a spanner in the works here. But I still wanted to mention it because I still believe Lorgar fits the current narrative, at least to me, more than Angron does at the moment. I would give anything to see Lorgar behold the God Emperor's power, to see Guilliman have to look Lorgar in the eye once more, knowing the Emperor has now ascended to godhood, after everything that transpired on Monarchia. I mean, you could even set it amidst the ruins of that city. I've looked at the Heresy era maps and I believe it falls just on the northern side of the Great Rift. Or it's close enough to make it work anyway. I mean, that would be the ultimate in dramatic effect. And out of all of these possibilities, this is definitely my favourite. Regardless, however, of what Guilliman's ultimate reasoning will be, I think the repercussions of it will be perhaps even more fascinating. To quote an old saying, while the cat's away, the mice will play, I feel in Guilliman's absence within the Imperium Nihilus, the revelation and uproar regarding the unremembered Empire history will absolutely begin to explode. And that is possibly the true out-of-law reason to get Guilliman out of the way for a time. Really the perfect mechanic to allow this to all unravel before Guilliman has the opportunity to stamp it all out, allowing it in the Primarch's absence to spread like wildfire. So by the time he returns, it's become a legitimate problem. To me, it just makes too much sense to why Guilliman is being moved across the rift. It all makes just too much sense. And one thing is for sure though, interesting times are ahead. But as always guys, what do you think? What do you think is Guilliman's true intentions for now crossing the Great Rift once again? In having stabilised Ultramar, why do you feel he is moving across there now? Is it simply a matter of making the most of the opportunity? Or does he have a specific goal in mind? This is Guilliman we're talking about, and he never does anything without good reason, and without good strategic planning to boot. Is it a simple matter of giving help to Dante, or will it perhaps serve the larger goal? And when he returns, do you feel he'll return to the Imperium as normal, or do you feel there'll be a new crisis on the horizon? As always guys, leave your thoughts in the comments below, I love to read them. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. And if you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. But with that said, I am off and I'll see you all again real soon.